A lot of you guys have been waiting for this video. We're going to talk about the running back hit rates by tier historically in the bakery model and what you should be expecting with this year's group of running backs. Now, I need to do a couple of disclaimers because after the wide receiver videos, we had a lot of comments, a lot of questions about the bakery, how it worked, and how potentially it was, whatever. So we need to make a couple of disclaimers here. These hit rates, when we're talking about, okay, in tier 1 of the bakery, 100% or 85% of these running backs hit. That you cannot use that, and we're not trying to use that and saying, hey, this player has an 85% chance of hitting. That's not how it works, right? Because when Ryan built the model, he didn't build a model that spits out probabilities of players, from certain ranges in order to see how likely they are or unlikely to hit. That's not what the model is doing. The model is a scoring-based model, okay? So basically what it's doing is it's taking a number of inputs that Ryan used, a bunch of different techniques to calculate which inputs he should use, which metrics he should use to go into the overall score, weighting the scores and coming up with an overall running back score or wide receiver score for all of these prospects. And so it's not a predictive model. That's not what this is. It's a scoring model, and we're using the scoring model and the trends inside the tiers of the scoring model to look historically at how the hit rates have fallen based on the tiers. Now, there was conversation about the tiers last time. The tiers are more or less arbitrary in the sense that, there are cutoffs, and we can see the cutoffs in the running back scores historically, but it doesn't necessarily mean, we had a lot of people, okay, tier 5 had a greater hit rate than tier 4 on the wide receiver video. And something that is important to say is any statistical model like this, whether it's a scoring model, whether it is something that is like, something that has probabilities in it, things like that, is going to have noise. It's going to have variance. As somebody who does data science for my real job, it's what I actually do. Like I still have a big boy job, and it's what I studied actuarial science in college. I spent my entire college undergrad studying statistics, and now I do it on a day-to-day basis. You're not going to find a model that doesn't have noise at the bottom. If there was a model that could correctly predict sleepers or who's going to be bad out of a group where there's only a 1% hit rate at a super high clip, somebody would be rich here. Right? Sleepers are sleepers because they fly under the radar analytically. They're analytical sleepers. So the whole point of a model is to try to give us a better idea of who, from an analytical standpoint, could be a sleeper based on what we've seen from past trends and from other players that have been successful that have hit, right? And so, a lot of questions about the model in the last one. I would just say this, we didn't make the model. It's Ryan's model. If you have questions for Ryan in the comments, Ryan usually, monitors his videos, but you guys were giving him a lot of crap last time. I would challenge you to we would love to see more of these if you guys can make models and if you think you can come up with one that accurately predicts or better predicts some of this stuff. I just would say that I just don't think you're probably going to make one because they're extremely difficult to dial in. It takes a ton of work, and honestly, no model is going to be perfect. But let's look at this and let's see, again, based on the tiers historically in the bakery, how have running backs been hitting, or what rate have they been hitting at based on what tier they're calculated in the bakery. And so let's take a look at tier 1. There's only ever been 2 running backs in tier 1, and it was Bijan Robinson and Saquon Barkley. Okay. Obviously elite company, right? The hit rates there, 100% for running back 1. So both of those guys were running backs 1 and therefore running back 2 and 3. It's basically, hey, if you're in that tier, you have a you're guaranteed hit. So far in the history of the bakery, there's running back scores that are like 13.43 or higher. You're a guaranteed hit. Okay. Now going to the next tier, looking at the hits here, 100%. It's the same thing. Anybody in the blue tier here, 4 guys historically, JT, Travis Etienne, Jahmyr Gibbs, Christian McCaffrey, all 4 of them had at least 1 running back 1 season in their career.
That's very reminiscent of the wide receivers that we in these tiers.
And again, the integrity of a statistical model isn't measured by the bottom tiers. It's measured by the top tiers. What you're using to dial in a statistical model, depending on, no matter what mathematical technique you're using, you're testing it and making sure it's accurate based on the top. This running back model is calculating the top end very, very accurately here. And so this is why I look at this and say, I know this is a good model. But let's keep going down the list. Let's talk about tier 3 where we get out of the 100% range.
Yeah, so the tiers get a little bit bigger here, and you're just, with tiers getting bigger and having a little bit more data to work with, you're going to see a little bit more variance here. And obviously, you've got lower draft capital. You've got lower prospect profiles, lower grades overall. So the green tier, while it's good, does have some misses, but still, I will say, It's pretty solid for all the hits that you're going to have here. You're going to have a hit rate of about 89%, excluding Jonathan Brooks. If you include Jonathan Brooks as 80%, I will say that I don't think anyone in their right mind would say that it's unacceptable to exclude someone like Brooks, who we didn't expect to tear the same ACL twice in 2 years. So that one is like, he had a good grade and stuff. It's just unfortunate we never really got to see what he was capable of doing. But Dalvin Cook, Rashad Penny, Breece Hall, Javonte Williams, Dobbins, Fournette, Mixon, Walker, Jacobs. I mean, you take away that percentage of 89%, I would say 100% of these in this tier were value wins. Rashad Penny, his best finish on a total points perspective in a year was running back 41. He was ranked much, much, much higher than that, even after he was a rookie, because people saw the potential and the talent when he wasn't banged up. Same thing applied to J.K. Dobbins as well, who was a running back 2. And then you've seen this with Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker has never been a running back 1. Best finish that he's ever had is running back 18, and he has been ranked incredibly high as a top 5 running back after his rookie season because of the flashes that he showed there. So if you're talking value wins, you're pretty much 100% here outside of Jonathan Brooks. If you're talking production hits, you've got some misses here because of injury, really. Rashad Penny and Kenneth Walker are the two guys, ironically, both on the Seahawks, that could never really consistently stay healthy. Walker, we haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, tier 4, this is where it gets, again, the running back 1 percentage drops here, 39% when you're excluding guys from 2024, which we will, because those guys, running backs sometimes do take a couple years to hit here. The running back 2 percentage, though, 60%. Running back 3 percentage, 87%. And so you're looking at these guys having a pretty high floor. They're probably going to be a value win in here because you're seeing that these guys are having at least a running back 3 season 87% of the time. And so most of the guys in this tier, you have a lot of guys here. Devon Achane ended up being a huge one. Najee Harris was a ginormous value hit. So was DeAndre Swift, right? CEH at a time was. Alvin Kamara is one of the best fantasy football players of all time, and he was in this tier. You also have some guys in here that you have questions about. Miles Sanders as well as him, but even Antonio Gibson had a running back 1 season, I'm fairly sure. Kareem Hunt definitely did.
Rashad White and Connor.
Yep. Nick Chubb is in this tier. Yep. So you said James Conner.
Montgomery,
Ramondre Stevenson had a running back 1 season. So a lot of these guys, even though they're not the sexiest names, they do end up hitting and you get a value in on them. Now, you might have some questions about some of the names from recently. Trey Benson. My guess is Trey Benson still hits. Marshawn Lloyd and Braylon Allen were both the guys in this tier from last year. And really, when you're looking at last year's top 4 running backs, it was Jonathan Brooks, who, by the way, analytically was a very good prospect. It's why we were so high on him. It's really, really unfortunate. It's what injuries can do to you. But when he was producing at a college at Texas, he was very, very analytically good. But he was the top running back, and he was in the green tier. And then the next 3 running backs came in that yellow tier. And so you're looking at that, and they're at the bottom of the yellow tier. You have Marshawn Lloyd, Braylon Allen, and you're like, okay, these aren't great names, Avery. So you got Sony Michel in here. You've got A.J. Dillon. A.J. Dillon did technically hit from a value standpoint, but he just has ginormous quads.
Darius Geis.
Yeah, Darrell Henderson. Maybe there used to be some, but so you have some guys in here. You're like, it's right. But do keep in mind, a lot of those guys who aren't the sexy names will probably eclipse a running back 3 season in their career, and then at that point, you will get a value in for them depending on where you drafted them. And so this yellow tier honestly is pretty freaking good still. These are guys that maintain a pretty high floor when you draft them onto your dynasty teams. And then tier 5.
Yeah, so tier 5 is when the fall off really happens here.
Yep.
You saw it earlier at the wide receivers. I think it's definitely a lot more. There's a bigger stark difference between the tier breaks here. With tier 5, you go from an 87% running back 3 hit rate in tier 4 to a 46% running back 3 hit rate in this range. Again, a very extensive tier, a very big tier. And this is expected, honestly. By default, you've got all your low-end day 2 running backs that are going in tier 4. The only exception in that range was Braylon Allen and Ramondre Stevenson as well. They were the only 2 guys in tier 4 that actually had day 3 draft capital. You've got a mix of day 2 and day 3 draft capital in this tier 5. You're definitely going to have a lot more day 3 guys though. And then your day 2 guys are going to be like the late 3rd rounders, like guys like Devin Singletary, Deontay Foreman, Royce Freeman, Kendre Miller. Who else went here? Damian Harris. James Cook is really going to be the most notable, biggest outlier in tier 5 that you're probably going to see. He gets really good draft capital, and he ends up being very productive, produces as a running back 1 in this range. Tony Pollard, day 3 guy, ends up being a running back 1 at a point in time as well. So a ton of names here that I think are definitely noteworthy. A ton of guys that you've probably never even heard of.
Yeah.
Anthony McFarland.
Yep.
You've got Jason Huntley. Darrington Evans out of Appalachian State, Travion Williams, Jeremy McNichols, who actually you heard his name now. Marlon Mack was actually here. Bryce Love, like a ton of guys. You're like, who the heck are that? Who the heck are they? This truly is. I mean, you're looking at dang near 50-50 in this range, 46% for RB3 guys. And again, the lower you get into these lower tier ranges, the nice thing is to get a value in. It doesn't take a running back one season from any of these guys. It just takes running back 3 production more often than not. James Cook was the only guy that was different because he had high draft capital and had higher expectations, but he delivered because of that second round draft capital, and it was because of the receiving upside. We're going to touch on some guys, I think, in the 2025 class that fall in this range and which ones we're willing to take a shot on.
Yeah, and a good example of that last year was Tyron Tracy, who was also in that tier, and because he went to the right situation, even though he was at the bottom of this tier, we were advocating to draft Tyron Tracy. You saw me take Tyron Tracy in our live rookie draft that we did right after the draft in that video, because he went to, again, it's all, case by case. It's not all analytics. He didn't have great analytics, but you do have some value hints in here, and he was a huge value hit. The last year gets pretty ugly. 14% running back 3 seasons, 10% running back 2, 3% running back 1. So really you get down to the bottom and not a lot of hits there. So
it's Kyron.
Now that it's Kyron Williams, and that's pretty much it.
Yep.
Now that we have that out of the way, let's talk about this year's class, and let's talk about where these guys are going. And the big question you might be asking yourself is, where's Genty? Where is Genty? Is Genty in that purple tier? Would he be the 3rd running back ever to be in that coveted purple tier, and where there's never been a miss so far? He'd basically be guaranteed to be a running back 1, which again, the data doesn't directly indicate that. I'm inferring that myself, and yes, Genty is in that tier. His running back grade of 14.28 would be about 0.2 of a point behind Bijan Robinson, higher than Saquon Barkley, making him the 2nd highest rated running back analytically in the bakery ever. Well, since 2017, which is ever for us, all right? So, yes, Genty does fall in the tier where the guys who have gone there have had 100% hit rate. And so I don't think this should surprise any of you. I think most of us are on the same page, whereas we think that Genty is going to hit in the NFL, and it's almost a lock. That's why he's locked in 101 right now. Now, the next guy on this list, and again, this is very draft capital dependent, and so this is all subject to change. We did go out and change the draft capital inputs on the bakery to match Dane Brugler, who released the Beast. He had draft capital scores on all of these guys, and so we just did him to match. He's one of the best analysts in the industry. Also was very favorable for these running backs, but he did have a 1st-round grade on Omarion Hampton. Mm-hmm. And when you look at Omarion Hampton, he is in that blue tier. And that blue tier, again, only has 4 guys in it. You're looking at his running back score, and it would be 12.57. And that would put him the 4th overall rated running back of all time. This is, again, projecting 1st-round draft capital. Let's do this just for the sake of exercise here. This is why Hampton, if he gets 1st-round draft capital, us is the automatic 102. This is why. Because, again, you're looking at another tier. Historically, guys have hit every single time in this tier. 2nd-round draft capital takes him down to 11.24, which would put him in the green tier, more at the bottom of the green tier. So Hampton is very draft capital from an analytics standpoint dependent. He has the profile to be a very high-end running back prospect. If he goes in the 1st round, analytically, historically, we're looking at Hampton being almost a sure thing. And so you have reason to be excited about Omarion Hampton. And hopefully he goes 1st round, because it would be great for all of us, be great for our rookie picks, be great for the 102. It would be a fantastic situation in which the top end of this class got a lot better. So hopefully he gets that 1st-round draft capital. There are a couple guys in the green tier as well where those hit rates are still very good.
Yeah, we've got Caleb Johnson and Travion Henderson in this tier. Yes, Travion Henderson is, according to the bakery, over Quinshon Judkins. I know that can be very unpopular depending on what groups of dynasty players you're around. Some people swear by Quinshon, totally understand it. Some people swear by Henderson. We lie more in the Henderson camp. We like him and his skill set a bit more. But analytically, you're looking at both of these guys being pretty safe and conservative draft capital. Caleb Johnson, 2nd-round draft capital. Travion Henderson, 2nd-round draft capital. If you're not a believer in either of these guys, I mean, you give Caleb Johnson 3rd-round draft capital, and he actually is incredibly safe and stays in that green tier. He would actually be the only one in that green tier if he even gets 3rd-round draft capital. You drop Henderson from second round to third round draft capital. He's actually going to fall into this fourth yellow tier, which we're going to talk about next, and it's a lot bigger and also a lot of variance depending on what the size of this tier is actually going to look like based on projected draft capital for players even in the fifth tier. So I think it gets really interesting here.
Yeah, and again, we talk about this fourth tier. This is kind of the meat of most classes that are good running back classes, and I just want to look. Let's go ahead and put the 2017 running back class, this coveted running back class. How did it sort out in the bakery? Because really everybody's saying this is the best one since 2017. And when you're looking at the guys that are, let's just do this exercise real quick, yellow tier or above, there were 7 of those guys in 2018. There were 5 of them in 7 of those guys in 2017, 5 in 2018, 2019 there were 4, 2020 there were 9. But again, nobody really remembers is that 2020 class. It was a lot of guys, Akers, Gibson, Swift, CEH, Keyshawn Vaughn, A.J. Dillon, Zach Moss, that were, a lot of those guys were not sexy names. They ended up getting good draft capital, push their scores up. By the way, the bakery had Jonathan Taylor 5 spots ahead of Clyde Edwards-Helaire and 2 tiers above Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So I wish we had been making content back then because we would have had our answer on that one.
Yeah.
But in terms of 2021, 4 guys yellow tier or higher. 2022, 3. 2023, 6 guys. 2024, 4 guys. And then you get to 2025. There are 12 running backs that are yellow tier or higher this year with the projected draft capital we have. And we have, I think, probably 12, 13 guys, running backs, projected to go in the top 3 rounds. But in this year's draft class, that's not far-fetched at all. 12 guys. It's the most in the history of the bakery that have been yellow tier or higher. And you're talking about that yellow tier being a very high floor tier where those running backs historically have been a running back 3 at an 87% rate when they fall into that tier. So when you're looking at the guys this year in that tier, DJ Giddens is at the top with 3rd round draft capital. You give DJ Giddens 2nd round draft capital, and he's up there with Johnson and Henderson, suggesting he has very similar analytical profile to those guys. We love DJ Giddens a lot. Bashol Tootin, when you're looking at his analytical profile, you give him 2nd round draft capital, he's up in that green tier, right? But even in the yellow tier, I mean, he is the running back 6 right now with 3rd round draft capital. In that yellow tier, he's going to be an impact player. So is Cam Scatterbo, who's also in this tier. Quinshon Judkins. Now, I'll go ahead and clear this up. Nathan mentioned Henderson higher in the bakery than Judkins. You got to admit, guys, and there are reasons for this. There are very plausible explanations for why this is the case, but it doesn't change the fact that it is the case. Quinshon Judkins doesn't have a good analytical profile. When you're comparing him against the analytics of other college backs this year in college football, before he was at Ohio State in college football, Quinshon does not have a good analytical profile. Now, of course, that doesn't mean we're avoiding him. And of course, it doesn't mean we don't think he's worthy of a top 6 pick in dynasty rookie drafts. But it is to say that you can't really deny that his analytical profile is not any good. Now, the reason, and you're going to say this, and I agree, there's totally merit to this. The reason the bakery is not as high on him is because he was sharing a backfield with TreVeyon Henderson. I think it's 100% valid. And again, we're not shorting Quinshon Judkins. If we're talking about our rankings, we're ranking him in the same tier as TreVeyon. But in terms of analytically, there is a reason that Henderson is up here and Judkins is not. It's because we take the entire career into account when you're doing the bakery here. And so over the course of their career, Henderson has had a much better analytical profile. And so, yes, Judkins still deserves to be, if he gets, the draft capital, he deserves to be a top 6, top 8 dynasty rookie pick. Totally. Even though the bakery's low on him doesn't mean we're super low on him. But he does fall here. Jarquez Hunter, somebody that we've, talked a lot about. His analytical profile got a pretty big boost. It's with 3rd round draft capital. Same thing with Jordan James. Jordan James was Dane Brugler's, I think, running back 7, which we love Jordan James. We love to see that. And then you've got R.J. Harvey and Dylan Sampson falling in this tier as well. Now, one thing I will mention here, and we've got all those guys. The guys here in the tier below, one of the guys here, Damian Martinez, was projected 4th round draft capital by Dane Brugler. A lot of you guys are higher on that. If you give him 3rd round draft capital, he jumps up to that yellow tier as well. Mm-hmm. As well as Trevor Etienne, Devin Neal,
Jaden Blue. As well, you bump Kalel Mullings day 2 in the 2nd round. He goes up into that yellow tier. You do it to Raheem Sanders, 2nd or 3rd round. He goes into that yellow tier. The only 2 guys in this tier, which I think is incredibly notable, the only 2 guys that cannot bump up a tier, even with day 2 draft capital, are Ollie Gordon and LaQuint Allen. Ollie Gordon I want to highlight here specifically because What is the one knock on Ollie Gordon's production profile outside of the fact that he ran like a 4.6 plus 40 time and was super unproductive his junior year? Like we know that at this point. What's been the biggest knock on him and his efficiency metrics and analytical profile?
I feel like there's a lot of them. I can't pinpoint what
He
you're talking about.
is incredibly inefficient in the receiving game. Incredibly inefficient. His yards per reception, I think last year were like 4 or 5 or something. He doesn't make a big dent in the receiving game at all. And when you're looking at those second round running backs, going back to these hit rates for tier 5 historically, let me just tell you all the second round running backs that went in this range. James Cook, receiving upside. Rojo, not receiving upside, hit, and then massive fall off. He had like one good productive year. Your other second round guy was Kerryon Johnson. And that's it. That's it. So if you were to talk best case scenario where you have really good DC for Ollie Gordon, where the DC, the day 2 DC can't even get him bumped up, you're really viewing him in the same range, the same outlook sort of as a guy like James Cook, then you would hope that he would kind of have a similar skill set that's going to be very translatable to the NFL. And with him being slow, not being a dual threat guy in the backfield, in my opinion, he's a guy that I'm just not taking a shot on in this range. There are other guys I would rather take hit or take shots on. I'm very low on Trevor Etienne. I would much rather take a shot on Trevor Etienne. Devin Neal's probably the most well-rounded running back in this class outside of the top guys. He's incredibly safe, and he's not going to move a ton and fluctuate a ton depending on what the draft capital is. Damian Martinez, obviously, you've learned a lot about what his strengths are. He clearly has speed that we didn't think he would have at his size. He's like a bowling ball. He's going to get a lot of good goal line opportunities given the right situation. Jaden Blue just ran a 4.28, 4.29 at his pro day. That was amazing. That's what we wanted to see. Raheem Sanders, we're super low on Raheem Sanders. I would rather take a shot on Raheem Sanders than I would with Ollie Gordon, given their analytical profiles at this point. So keep that in mind with this tier. You're already going to have much lower hit rates compared to that 4th tier. You want to really play on what do the analytics say as a whole? How well-rounded are they analytically, and how much of a chance do they have to increase in value in terms of like where their tier ranking is in the bakery? That if they're already sitting in tier 5, you want to take shots on guys that probably aren't named Ollie Gordon. I'm just being honest there.
Yeah, that tier you can get down in the orange tier is pretty weak. And a lot of people are going to use this exercise. They use it on the wide receiver video and said, guys, doesn't this prove that draft capital is being weighed too much here? No, it absolutely does not.
I mean, we just showed it to you with Ollie Gordon.
You want to know the strongest statistical relationship between a single input and a running back's success in the NFL? That single input is draft capital.
It is. Yeah, it is.
Objectively, there's not another metric or score, whatever, that has as strong a relationship and as strong a correlation with running back success in the NFL as the draft capital does.
And that's going to be the case, like for any position, and also, like, come on, guys, it's just with draft capital specifically. Like there, of course, is going to be somewhat of a correlation there, and it is going to carry weight.
It's a huge correlation.
It definitely carries weight in the way that we analyze these guys. But that's the entire point, that you're not taking. That's why you're not taking Brashard Smith over Ashton Genty, because draft capital matters.
If you drafted if you were in your dynasty rookie drafts and you took everything that goes into the bakery, whether it's dominator rating, breakout, speed, missed tackles, force per attempt, yards per carry, elusivity, or draft capital, and you drafted just based on one of those metrics, you did your rankings based on just one of those metrics every year and drafted your running backs, you would far and away, not even relatively close, have the most success if you were drafting off of draft capital alone, which makes it the single strongest input for any statistical model when you're talking about predicting rookies coming into the NFL, hands down, period. There's no other input that comes even close than draft capital does. Draft capital is weighted very heavily, and it should be weighted very heavily because it's the only one with an extremely strong direct relationship with the output of these rookie running backs. And so,
but is that the only way that we grade these guys, and does it carry too much weight? In our opinion, no, not at all.
But we're analytical, and we're very draft capital heavy as well.
Yeah,
everybody has their own process. I'm just saying, draft capital of all the metrics is the one that you should be leaning on the most. It is the best one for sure.
9 times out of 10, you're defaulting to draft capital investments over someone who's going 2 rounds below. 9 times out of 10. Again, we'll point out the outliers to you a lot of times based on other metrics in their analytical profile, but there's a reason it's 9 times out of 10.
And then this last year, this pink tier, Woody Marks is in this tier, Brashard Smith is in this tier, Taj Brooks is in this tier. Again, they could jump up with draft capital, but these guys don't hit in this tier. But they statistically they've hit at a 15% rate, and there's a large sample size of guys in this tier. So anybody who falls in this tier come draft time, I mean, but here's the thing: you have 20 running backs ahead of that. You haven't even talked about wide receivers. You haven't talked about quarterbacks and tight ends. You're going to be taking these 13 through 20 guys, which even when you're looking at the orange tier, the amount of like through the orange tier, there's 20 guys here through the orange tier. In years past, 11, 12, 8, 11. I mean, 20. Y'all, we are taking running back at the beginning of this draft, in the middle of this draft, and at the end of this draft. There's not a single point this year with the way that this class is built. There's not a single point in the draft where we won't take running backs. This is the Bakery proves it, an extremely strong running back class. The best on record, in my opinion, from the Bakery's ever produced. And again, it's data. It's statistics. Use it however you want. Maybe analytics, maybe statistics plays zero part in who you choose to draft for your dynasty team. That's totally fine. This is our process. This is the tool we use. It's a good tool, guys. This is a good model. I'm not qualified to talk about a lot. I'm probably more qualified to talk about statistics than I am dynasty fantasy football. Just being honest with you, because I at least actually had to. There's at least some level of objectivity that I had to study there. It's math. Like math doesn't care what you think. It's still math. It's still statistics.
The maths.
It's a good model. I'm telling y'all it is. But Ryan's going to be open to questions in the comments. And again, I want to stress this to you. This is not saying, okay, this player has a 20% chance of hitting. This player has a 20% chance of being an RB1. These are of the players that have been observed with similar profiles, similar scores. Here's the rate they hit at. We can use that. We can infer from that data and say, okay, looking historically, these guys who, DJ Giddens in this tier, the guys in that tier have had a pretty good hit rate. We can use that to make connections and also to make predictions. But again, that's not what the model is doing. You don't have to use it. But I will say this. We really appreciate Ryan. We really appreciate him letting us use the model. I think it's a really, really good model. I think it does a good job predicting, especially the high-end guys. Which, again, that's what's important. You know, if I miss on a third-round pick in Dynasty, darn.
Bummer. But
I'm hitting on my first-round pick, and I know if I'm taking Hampton or Genty, it's telling me that I'm hitting. That's what it should do. It does it very well. So hopefully you enjoyed it. You can get access to the full Bakery over on the site with code DOMAIN. Any Motherflocker tier is going to get you access to the Bakery. You can access all of the data for yourself, look at the historical guys yourself, all the hit rate, etc. And you can look at this year's class and have it ready for next year's when we get past this Dynasty rookie season, but you can have this in front of you for the draft. You also get a team blueprint for free with a rookie draft blueprint when Nathan and I break down your Dynasty team. It's included with the annual Motherflocker tier, and you can get our rookie draft toolkit as well, so you're dominating your drafts. But drop a like if you enjoy the statistical videos. Again, just a discussion. Make sure you're subscribed as well. We're trying to hit 25K. Appreciate you guys. We'll see you later.